You
So
just
I have
don't
this,
know.
I don't know why, I have the illustration of like a seed, like when it's something painful or something that we feel like we lost, like we're letting it go, we're putting it in the ground, just letting it go. But then like we could return later and it's got fruit, shade, comfort, beauty to it years later, or maybe it's gone, but you let it go.
Truly only something that can be traced back to its origin from the perspective that I'm at now. I'm like, oh, I knew all along that this was heading in that direction. It's like, I didn't know. You're right. It's very much that seed. If you buy a packet of them and it's just mixed seeds, you don't know what they are. But if you are planting them and planting each one, things do happen over time. Things do come back around in ways that are totally unexpected.
Hello and welcome back to Wildly Wealthy Life, the podcast. And I am very excited about today's episode. Get ready to set your hearts ablaze, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Whitten is a LA-based actor working in animation and video games with companies like DreamWorks, Disney, Netflix. Have you heard of any of these? DC, Sony PlayStation, Square Enix, Nintendo, Bethesda, EA, and a whole bunch more. Notable roles include Kyojuro Rengoku from Demon Slayer, The Flame Ashara, Kaden Kara Kazuya from Genshin Impact, Dr. Kurt Connors, which is basically the lizard, from Marvel Spider-Man 2, Sita from Fire Emblems, The Three Houses, O from Home, Adventures of Tip and O, Leslie Kyle from my favorite video game franchise, Final Fantasy VII, the remake, and Alex in Street Fighter V, which I have on my PlayStation right now. Mark is also co-creator, actor, voice director for the popular horror podcast, The Hotel, and the award-winning sci-fi anthology, The Theater of Tomorrow.
Hey, my name is Kat.
And I'm Lee.
And welcome to the
Wildly Wealthy Life podcast. In this show, we explore the journey of what it means to live a truly exceptional and fulfilling life.
Each episode focuses on how a foundation of brilliant minds and brave hearts nurtured through the arts leads to lifelong success.
Get inspired with actionable tips to foster a growth mindset, leadership values, and creativity in children and adults, turning their potential into lasting contributions for their communities.
We hope you embrace the challenge to shift your perspective as we equip you and the next generation for a
wildly wealthy life.
Normally, we do our takeaways standing up so you guys can see our matching Cat Samurai t-shirts. But today, if you're listening on Spotify, watch it on YouTube, we have Boogie on Lee's arms. So we can't stand up, and that's why we're recording our takeaways here.
Sweet. My takeaway, we need to go visit Mark. Go say hi. Mark, if you're listening, hit me up, brother. Let's go get some coffee or head over to the closest cat cafe and have some laughs.
Yeah. My takeaway is just his letting go, letting things come full circle, trusting, doing your best, being excellent at your work. And then his take on a wildly wealthy life at the very end, I felt was very, very valuable. So don't miss that. That was really an amazing interview.
Yeah. I also just enjoyed the sharing of your gift that he talked about. So we all have different skill sets that we're trying to develop. We all have different expertise and things that we're good at, and letting those things shine as a good reminder to just keep pressing into your hobbies, the things that you love, and there's going to be fruit that comes from it. So I think that's some of the bigger lessons that are coming out from this episode.
Awesome. Let's bring Mark in.
Is this a home studio you're in, Mark?
Hi. Good to see you. What's up?
It's good to see you.
I said, is that a home studio you're in?
Yes, this is my little home studio here.
Your magic booth?
Very cool.
In a magic booth right now. Yeah, there's wonderful construction stuff happening outside today. So instead of being in a normal room, I get to just kind of lock myself inside the padded box.
Any kitty going to make an appearance today?
I hope so. I mean, I've left the door open for them to like kind of make their way up. Vesper was in here. She was exploring and inspecting, but once I shut the door, she was like, nah, I don't want to be in here anymore. So,
because we're in our dining room table and our cats walk in front of us. And so we've had podcast recordings where the butt goes into the camera. And we're like, you know what? That's part of our charm. Okay. And by the way, Mark, we wore this shirt. We were serving this shirt, by the way, for our interview with you.
I love it. They look fantastic. Don't think I wasn't clocking those immediately.
We decided to wear like matching cat shirts in every interview, but this one was special. This was one of our newer ones that we haven't worn yet. So we wore it specially because we're interviewing you.
This is good. You have one for every different interview then.
Well,
it's a little bit of an obsession to somebody on my right.
We're getting there.
How long has it been? Like,
well, since 2013.
Oh my God! Really? Since 2013?
Yeah, that's the year that Aladdin closed, right?
One of the.
I think it closed in 2013, doesn't it? Didn't it? I think so.
My God. Well, it's good to see you again. It was so lovely to hear from y'all. How's life been for the past decade?
Well, it's been life, you know.
Yeah.
We have, 3 fur babies, and then who loves to just make their appearances, you know. But yeah, he's changed jobs a lot.
Yeah, like so one was COVID. The other was just a school that had kind of outlived its life, and I progressed to someplace else. But I'm over at Pepperdine now in Malibu at their business school, so that's pretty cool. But actually, growing up, I was always into like arts and animation. So it was funny. The last like 15 years, I was at different film and art schools. So we may have some people that have crossed paths with each other, because that's the interesting part about what you get to do is like you're in all these animes, games, TV shows, movies, commercials, but like your interaction with people is kind of limited. Is that right? Like basically living in this foam box, as you said.
Box. And then this thing. Yeah, until I started doing conventions even, I didn't really meet a ton of folks that I worked with on a regular basis, which is funny. Everyone at cons is like, oh, how do you like working with this person or that person? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I hear their voice occasionally when it's when they have them recorded before they have me recorded. But yeah, it's been. I mean, we can get into this more as we talk as things are going on. But it's been very rewarding, but it's also been very isolating by nature of the work. It's a weird way to perform, and I love it. But there are its downsides, obviously, like being at the stage at Aladdin and getting to like see people and be physically present with people has been, missed.
Yeah. I looked at your site and I was listening to your demo reels and I was like, man, you got a lot of voices. It's really cool. It's like, it's really amazing. What kind of, I guess, like growing up, like, of course, you probably, you're into acting, you're training. What kind of like leadership values did you have to have, like, as a child or going into your adulthood that kind of made you into this voice actor who's very successful and, disciplined in your work and do what you got to do, even when it's so self-isolating, as you said?
That is it. That is a big question. That is covering. As far as leadership goes, I mean, especially when I was growing up, I don't know if I necessarily. I don't know. I think that there were other leaders in my life that helped me to get to where I am, and I think that especially this may be a separate point to be talked about, maybe a little bit in its own little box. But when you get to be in this profession, what I've found out is that you do have to self-lead a lot of the time because of how it is, because of how isolated it is. Like when we're auditioning for theater, or even, pre-COVID, a lot of people were going in and doing film auditions and everything. It's very much more collaborative. You go in and you're with people, scene partners even, and you're getting directed generally, or you're getting watched in the moment by a human. But for voiceover, when I started to transition into that, and I was doing it even when we were working in Aladdin, and Billy, you remember Billy, he was getting into it too. And it just, when you're doing that, so much of it was like, tape yourself and send it off. Tape yourself and send it off. And so that's where that being a leader kind of comes in. You have to self-direct. You have to there's absolutely no feedback loop, or a very limited feedback loop. And there already wasn't much of one anyways for things like film, TV, theater. It's very much a don't call us, we'll call you if something happens thing. But even more so, to the point, you don't even have someone being like, okay, that was great, now try it like this. It's very much you shoot your shot and then go on to the next one, which has been a new challenge, as it were. But as far as like growing up and getting into things, which was the original point, I think that what primed me or positioned me well for this was having good leaders and good coaches and paying attention to them. I think I got lucky. I had a lot of folks in my life. I did productions when I was quite young, and I looked up to a lot of the people in these community theaters, regional theaters, that I was lucky enough to work with as mentors. And being young, there were a lot of them, maybe not all. Actually, I wasn't quite aware of the mentor relationship. So I don't know, maybe they were like, who's this kid? Get out. But I was around long enough to like soak a lot of what they were doing in. In fact, that's what my mom prompted me to do very astutely. She was like, just go there and be like a sponge and just collect everything. And I think that's been very important. It's not just to have a single mentor, but to really be paying attention to everything that's going on around you. And luckily, I loved that. I already loved the environment I was in, so paying more attention to it was easy. I already felt comfortable in that space. And then the more I paid attention to what people were doing, even unprompted, it wasn't like someone necessarily had to come up to me and say, hey, kid, you should try it like this. I'm watching people and also trying it like they're doing as well, of my own accord. And I think that spark is kind of within us. And I think that maybe an important thing is that you don't necessarily need permission to do it. I guess maybe some of my mom's prompting was my permission. And certainly when people do teach you in that context, whether it be in a formal classroom or a note in a production that you're in, then you have that permission to go ahead and do it. But then giving yourself permission to always be playing and always be exploring, that was important, I think. I believe it's important. It's weird. A lot of this, I guess, well, when you interview anyone, it's all through our lens. So I'll try to be as honest as I can in expressing how I view things.
Yeah.
I love it though. So you're saying like the value of play, exploration, the value of mentorship, having like good mentors around you, especially as a child, and in your teens and adulthood. Even as an adult, I think we all need mentors, as adults and coaches and whatever it is that we want to excel at, and just in life in general. Like what I'm hearing is the leadership skill is really self-accountability, because I always tell like my piano students, that learning a musical instrument is so unique in a sense that if you're in a drama club, or if you're in dance, or if you are in sports, right? You go and be with people to play sports. You go to be in a studio to dance. You go to, with your scene partner to do acting, right? But with a musical instrument, even if you play in a band, for you to get good first, right? You actually have to learn the skill yourself and by yourself. And there's no one else who's going to basically tell you, hey, I'm going to sit with you while you practice piano and just be with you. And there's nothing like that. Like you usually, as a child, you sit down and you just have to, think of like a 6, 7 year old and they're like, oh, I have to practice now and I got to do this alone myself. It's like that self accountability and actually learning how to lead yourself. Do you remember any instances as a child where you like had to learn that, like the self accountability part, or any stories about that?
I remember when I failed at it.
we like that because we learn from failures.
In the context of, well, when you're mentioning like especially musicianship and bands, and I think your point on self accountability is great. And you're right, with something like a band, that makes me think of like you have all these people playing these instruments, but when you get together for band practice, you're not necessarily teaching any individual how to play their instrument. You are creating the sound of the band with all of those people who theoretically have all been doing that work of their own accord. My brothers are wonderful pianists. One of my one in particular, he's been still doing it throughout his whole life. He composes, he works on improvisation, jazz. One of those things was that I had to sit down and practice. So it kind of fell on me as the third child to be like, oh, you'll also learn piano. We got this piano, everyone's learning it. I did not take to it at all. Like I just did, for whatever reason, I would sit there and I love music and I loved, I even probably liked playing piano, but I did not love it to the point where I was self-accountable. And I was drawn in other directions. And it was like pulling teeth to try and get me to do a thing. And I think that at that point in time, you arrive at a couple of situations. Is there someone there in your life who is, pushing you forward? And that gets into a little bit of a dodgy ground, right? Like push the Mark too hard when he doesn't want to learn piano. And maybe other things will pop up. But push Mark really hard because he's resisting, and maybe he breaks through something where he's like, oh, well, now it's easy. And I feel that, I mean, it could be in my own head, that feedback loop where I'm like, I'm trash at piano, so I don't want to practice. Instead of finding out like, no, you're not terrible at it. This just requires attention. One way or another, that realization did not land upon my brain. Um, and I was so resistant that I think my parents were just like, you know what? We've pushed you as much as we want, as we feel is right as parents. We've sent you to classes. And I think that probably a lot of parents and families find this with their kids, that they try a bunch of things. You try so many different things to see what grabs your child's attention. And as a child, hopefully, if we're lucky enough, we are able to try so many things as well to find what grabs our internal attention. It's not to say that things don't require work. It's just to say that perhaps when work and motivation to work meet each other, there is like, there you've found your sweet spot. And my sweet spot was categorically not piano. So despite it being a musical art, despite it being a creative thing, now, like, I'd sure roll up occasionally. I've like bounced back into it because I like music. And so I played the Final Fantasy theme in college. I learned how to like, clunkily play that out because I found it soothing. But again, it never really took hold to the point where I am a pianist myself. And I think I've perhaps diverted from your point of self-accountability.
Oh, it's okay. It's
no,
all
but
good.
it does bring up another point I wanted to ask about, because with the industry that you're in and just the nature of that business and being with voice acting, as you said, like you're recording yourself and sending it off, recording yourself and sending it off. And I don't know how many you do a week, but I imagine, say, out of 10, maybe you get a response on 1 to 2 to 3. As you grow, maybe that turns into 5, half, 50%. Probably not. Okay.
No, not for me.
Yeah, no. And it's I imagine, yeah, it's very low like response numbers. But with with that kind of non-response, what is the mindset that you've developed going into these professional auditions where you can share how many you think you do a week, but you have to have this grit. I imagine you have to have a not like a caring, but then also a not caring on the response side of things. So talk about your kind of mental state, your thoughts as you go through some of this audition process.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the toughest parts of the job, and one that I've gone through many different stages with. If I kind of look back over the past 20 years that I've been trying to do this professionally through theater, what have you, it's difficult, and it's taken on many forms. And you're right, you do kind of have to have a thick skin and not think about it. To answer your question about how many I do a week, it can vary. During slow times, it might be like 2 or 3 to like half a dozen for me personally. And sometimes you got like a few dozen auditions a week. So you can have like 20, 30 roles that you're auditioning for. As far as response rates, to be perfectly candid, I haven't looked because it's probably very depressing. I know that I have a folder full of thousands of auditions, as potentially all of my cohorts do as well, and I'd be surprised if it was even 3% of responses. And I think that for folks that are more prolific, maybe they have different numbers. And that's another one of those things that kind of dovetails into this whole like thick skin thing. You cannot think of it like that. I say that adamantly, but I assure you that I think of it all the time.
Yeah, we say right that we try not to care, but like we really do care. It really does get to us.
We know we're not supposed to, but you can't keep your hand out of that cookie jar. So in a way, that can be frustrating on many levels. I've done for a while. It was like, oh, I was not as fortunate to have so many auditions. I would have in different situations before I had an agent, I was scaring up my own opportunities, which were much slimmer. With different agencies and with different amounts of credits on your resume, you may get different opportunities and or less opportunities initially. And so it does build. There is a bit of that build in there. But at no point, for me at least, has it become like, okay, now we're sailing easy. I can forget about all that. I have a consistent like return rate. It's just like, nah. Any consistency within the business comes from the relationships that you make and how those come back around to you. A relationship that you make or your reputation may result in more people reaching out. And the more of that you have, inevitably, the more of it gets reflected back. Again, that's not even a guarantee. But as far as like the mental state in dealing with it is, there are a couple of things that I've had to do. I had a really hard time when I was starting out in theater auditions. I would let them get to me. I would fall in love with the thing, and I'm prepping because I'll be prepping for like a week or something, working on songs, working on scenes, and you really get into this hopeful mindset, which I think is good. But at the same time, I've had feedback come to me where it's like, oh, you want it too much. You're too excited for this. And that's probably me getting, well, in a way, it sounds harsh, but in a way, it's probably my nervousness overtaking myself. And instead of performing honestly, I desperately need the job or validation. That part takes over. And so as frustrating as it was to recognize that, because I went through, well, how can I not want it and then still do a good job? And there's a balance there that is inherently frustrating. It's like you don't want to attach yourself so much to it. So in a way, making it a job that you're able to move on from. And little tricks, I heard something that may have been I don't know if this is a true story or not, but like Nick Offerman, apparently after auditions goes and like, he does a lot of woodworking. And after an audition, he'll go and do his hobby and forget about it. Forgetting about what you just did is so important. And mostly I think that's to say is that it's not that you don't pay attention and prepare. You do. But then you go, you do your performance, and then the show has closed. And maybe you'll get asked back. But I mean, especially thinking of auditions as like little performances. I prepare, I go in, I do my performance, the curtain drops. That's it. And everything else is out of your hands.
Yeah, I think Mark, like it's basically kind of what you're saying. If I can maybe, like think about it this way, is it's putting excellence in your work, right? It's not like we can't be perfect because we don't know what that really means, but like really just being as excellent as we can be to show up prepared, to show up strong, but to completely be detached from the result. Not to attach our value basically and who we are as human beings to the result, which I know is very hard to do. But I feel like that's what it really boils down to, right? Like it's we do our best, but the result is out of our hands. We've done what we could do, and hopefully they'll meet us in the middle and the opportunity will come. But if it doesn't, it says nothing about who we are as people and our value and our talents, right? So in that sense, I guess, so how do you try to get yourself in that mindset? Maybe you have a practice or anything that you try to put into so that you can be, I've done my best, and we just let it go.
I mean, time has helped. Over just over time, like time is great, and the older I get, the more experienced I get, the easier it has become. So, but that's not really a practice.
So getting older is good, huh? Yeah, getting older is good.
Yeah. Well, it can be. It gains you a certain amount of perspective. You start to. We think we're so very in control. And in a way, we've been taught that we are very much in control of all of these moments in our life. And meditating on the idea that there's so many things that we cannot, and allowing that to go. Yoga. I love physical exercise, personally. I think it's something that is in the realm of what I can control. I can very much control whether I go to the gym, whether I run, whether I breathe, how I'm stretching. I can control that, and that is all a very personal journey. And I feel like it's also to me, because I everything that I do for the longest time, I always wanted it to also apply to being an actor. So it's like, I'm going to learn how to ride a horse because that'll be a good skill I'll use one day. But truly, like taking care of yourself, taking care of your body, I think is very important for everybody. I think it reveals an amount of dedication alongside with your own work ethic, an amount of respect for us as actors. It sounds lame, but your instrument, which is literally what we're using, but also keeping myself healthy in my mind, in my body, helps me to be a better person in the world around other people. And it's not necessarily a vanity thing. It's nice to feel like you can be capable and go places and look as good as you can. But ultimately, like it is that what helps me is that I get to like center into myself a little bit and detach myself from all of these externals that I have no control over. And so in that way, like exercise practice has been great. I love going to a workout because it is not my audition whatsoever. And I really kind of get to focus in, get to that meditative state. So, I mean, however one meditates, I think that it is an important thing to do. To go back to Billy, he told me for the longest time, he was getting up in the mornings and just like he would take time for himself, like a half hour, and he'd go out on his porch and he would read. He'd go outside and he'd read something that he enjoyed. A lot of times, it could be anything from like self-help books to maybe a fiction that he enjoyed, things like that. But having that sort of meditative routine can perhaps help you to meet the day and meet the challenges of it, and knowing that you can return to that as like a little bit of a touch point. So that's one thing. The people in our lives, I think, are important. You know, having anyone you can disconnect from these things. What my problem is, and sometimes this gets in the way, especially since our business as actors is very much one that we find in moments where other people relax. People are like, oh, I go home and I watch a show because that washes everything away. And it can be frustrating when you're like, yeah, I can go home and watch a show and be like, oh, all those actors doing what I want to do. And like, well, how are they doing it? Who's casting this? You know, it's like that is not helping if you can meaningfully detach. So I love video games, obviously, and I play a lot of games. One game that I am playing right now is just, there is no voice acting in it.
so you're not like listening to.
What are you gaming on right now?
I'm playing Cult of the Lamb, and it has been very, very revealing to a lot of it's been very cathartic and revealing to my psyche. But I love games like that, like Hollow Knight, Hyper Light Drifter. I love good, indie games that have like fantastic music. Civilization, granted, it still has Sean Bean in it, and we're getting another installment coming up here. But like that, I can at least I listen to the bits and bobs, soak it in. It's comforting. There are some games I'm able to fully detach myself from.
When President Roosevelt passed away in his sleep, they found a book under his pillow, proof that even in his final moments, he never stopped learning. That's what true leaders do. Leaders are readers. If you want to grow your mindset, sharpen your skills, and become a better leader, reading is essential. I've compiled my top book recommendations, books I've personally read and applied in both business and life. These books have transformed the way I think, lead, and live. So, are you ready to grow? Check out my book list at wildlywealthylifepodcast.com/mytools and grow 1% better every day. Think about the world your child will grow up in. Fast-paced, ever-changing, filled with challenges. But what if they had the mindset, courage, and the creativity to thrive no matter what? At Cat's Keys & Company, we believe in shaping that future now with Brilliant Minds, Brave Hearts, our online immersive program for children where they learn leadership and a growth mindset through the magic of storytelling, movement, and music. There's a ton of leadership, mindset, and confidence training for adults. But why should your kids wait till they're adults to learn this? Your child needs these tools today before the world dictates who they should be. Imagine raising kids that know the power of their thoughts, the capacity to navigate emotions, and the courage to live boldly. With our Brilliant Minds, Brave Hearts program, they'll learn to stand strong in who they are no matter the noise around them. Join our priority list at catskeys.com/priority and be the first to know when enrollment opens in November. Again, that's katzkeys.com/priority. I'll see you there.
One thing I want to jump in with real quick is I'm going to nerd out with you for half a minute here, and Kat's going to roll her eyes and maybe like stare off into space for a minute. But you mentioned Final Fantasy VII, and like for me, I came off of my junior year of high school. It started with my grandma that died, and then all the way into my senior year, a good friend of mine ended his life over Christmas break, and then I graduated in '97, same year Final Fantasy came out. So all the themes in Final Fantasy about loss and love and everything else, that game hit. I don't even know why I'm feeling emotional all of a sudden.
Oh.
But like that game hit.
I know why you're feeling emotional all of a sudden because this stuff like hits.
Yeah. And like that game, I've played through probably the original one, probably about 7 or 8 times. And then obviously there's the remake that came out. Having like personal connections with the game, we didn't know each other that well at that stage. But like knowing John was in it, just put a whole new like layer on top of that game. And like the whole time that you're talking right now, I'm thinking of like Leslie in the game and all the whole Don Cornelio scene and all that. So thank you for your work.
Yeah, and his story too is like, I mean, I know it's not included in the original. It's more from the fictions that were put out, and then injected into the game. But man, I love his story. I think that's it. Again, what Final Fantasy does is they do a good job of diving into these emotional moments, even if it's for just a little bit of a side story. His search for his fiance. And that sort of loss. And I mean, if you really they don't get super dark with it, but I can't imagine it's a good situation over there with Don Corneo. I mean, there's some heavy stuff in there.
Thank you for like doing your part in the role, because the stories and the feelings, the emotions, everything that you're bringing, to the audience, has such a deep impact, like on our psyche, like you said, just making us feel better. You're like helping in my disconnect from like the stresses of the day or what things that I'm working on. And I wanted to, all of this kind of circling around, with the video game world or with auditions in general that you've done, I was wondering about like the highs and the lows. So like, do you remember an audition that you were just kind of destroyed after? And then another audition where you booked it and it was, I don't know, the best thing since sliced bread for you.
Oh gosh. There are some of the auditions that I don't know if I've necessarily been fully destroyed. Although, back to a lot of the theater auditions that I did, I was pretty down about Avenue Q. I got pretty close on Avenue Q, the tour and or Broadway production. I was in puppet school. Right before I was meant to go in for the final callback, I got very, very sick. I lost my voice completely for like a week. And I missed that opportunity. Obviously did not get cast. I couldn't listen to Avenue Q for years. I was just like, I can't. And that's the thing. I was young. I was so very attached to it. So many of those songs started meaning so much to me. And I had this belief that you have when you're young and in love, and maybe even when you're older and in love too, because there are plenty of things that I audition for now. It's so rapid fire in VO that I don't have time to fall in love like I used to all the time. But with the slower pace of theater, like I listened to that soundtrack. I drank that show in, and I dedicated a lot of time to it. And yeah, that one really was pretty painful. And I didn't want to like interface with it anymore. And that sucks. It's probably not the best way to deal with that. And I acknowledge it.
Did you learn as you go through, and what were some of the learning lessons from that experience?
What did I learn, Mark? Did I learn anything from it? I mean, I did learn that in a way, for me, for better or worse, disconnection and distance does help. Because otherwise I just carry around bitterness with me. And in lieu of bitterness, I was like, disconnection seems better than active me being a grump. Because then I'm bringing that weird energy to everyone else who also enjoys it. And the reason I'm bitter is because I enjoy it so much, too much. And so stepping back and allowing other people around me to not bring my negativity along with me was helpful until a point where I could personally process it. And I could still see people calling me out for that, but whatever. It's our own like healing journeys. And I'd like to think that at least I had the presence of mind to not put my healing journey on everybody else. But the flip side of this story is that eventually I did get into Avenue Q out here in Los Angeles, and it was an amazing experience. And I met so many fun people, and it came back at this time when it was just right. And I had been puppeteering for a while at that point, and this audition came back, and it wasn't Broadway, it wasn't a tour, it was a 99-seat theater out here. But I fell in love with the show again. And I was ready to come back and step back into things. I had like whatever my insecurity or my childishness about it was, I had dealt with it. I had let it go. And I was like, I'm ready to audition for this again. And man, do I love it like I always have. And I was lucky enough to get into it.
I'm getting chills just listening to this story. Like, seriously, it's so good. Okay, keep going. It's so good.
I didn't even book the part that I thought I was. I thought I was a Princeton Rod for sure. In fact, that's what I auditioned for. And the part that I booked was Nikki Trekkie, which I never saw myself as. But when I stepped into that part during the show, I was like, oh God, I should have been auditioning for this all along. I was not right for the other part. I just am not that guy. I come across as it. I probably look like it. But I was so much more suited to that other part and that moment. And it turned out being wonderful. I met fantastic friends that I still keep in touch with. And and here's another like random story of divine providence. I ended up getting onto a TV show through that show. Jeff Marks really loved our production, and Richard Israel was our director. He's fantastic. Through those connections and those people, the show Big Little Lies needed a production of Avenue Q, and they came back to us and they were like, "Hey, do you want to be on this TV show as Nikki and Trekkie?" And I was like, "Sure." I mean, it's a glorious background part. But I was like, I never thought it would take me to this place. So I don't know. The whole Avenue Q journey, I never knew it was that important to me, I guess. But it turned out to be something very important and all at once surprising, in ways I never could have known.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a full circle moment that you never really expected. But it's just such a beautiful illustration of like, when we lose something, sometimes it's because, and it hurts us so badly or deeply, right? It's because we really think that, this should be our time. It is our time. We should have gotten this one. It's our time. And then we lose it. And then we didn't realize that, it's gonna come back. Like it will. You just don't know.
I don't know why. I have the illustration of like a seed. Like when it's something painful or something that we feel like we lost, like we're letting it go, we're putting it in the ground, just letting it go. But then like we could return later and it's got fruit, shade, comfort, beauty to it years later, or maybe it's gone, but you let it go and you grow and you have to kind of truck on. But yeah, that's an awesome story, Mark, about kind of loss and reliving and recapture of victories and that.
I love it.
Truly only something that can be traced back to its origin from the perspective that I'm at now. I'm like, I knew all along that this was heading in that direction. It's like, I didn't know. You're right. It's very much that seed. If you buy a packet of them and it's just mixed seeds, you don't know what they are. But if you are planting them and planting each one, things do happen over time. Things do come back around in ways that are totally unexpected. And that's another thing that I've come to appreciate a lot as my career has progressed, is that I don't know where connections are going to go. I think that's such an important thing, is that I did not know that we were going to be doing this podcast together. And I don't know what we're going to be doing 10 years from now. But it's nice to you come in and out of people's orbit in strange ways. And there's something fascinating and unknowable about that. And if you can give over to it, and I think that's where you find the ease that takes your desperation away from a moment of, I have to have this thing. If you can give into a larger view of time and how time flows, you can maybe just loosen your grip a little bit on your desire to have that exact thing at that exact moment. I didn't need to get into Avenue Q at that exact moment. Would it have been cool? Sure. But was that the end of the story? Clearly it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Because then that, you think about it too. It's like if say you had gotten it, it's just a different trajectory. And like this audition that you did in Los Angeles and booked, like you probably would maybe I've
we
already
don't
done
know.
that.
Yeah.
Let me go something else.
Might not have even been in Los Angeles.
100%. Yeah.
If I had done that, there's entirely a whole different like bizarro fork Marvel what if that I end up in New York for the rest of my life, right? I mean, like, and then I miss out on friends that I met in Florida, friends that I met down at Disneyland, friends that my wife that I've met out here when I'm in California. Like, I don't know. And this isn't to say like, again, I look back and I'm grateful for all the things that have flowed through this time. And is that to say like, oh, but if I had gotten Avenue Q, I'd have grown a mustache and been like super evil? It's like, no, life would have been different.
Yeah. And we don't know what that would have been.
And we don't know. And it could be equally wonderful. I think there is wonderful stuff around us, all around us.
Yeah.
I think it's a gratefulness, or it's a opportunity for us to be grateful and thankful for the the loss, the pain, but then the strength and the courage that we've gained from those experiences, what we've learned and where it's carried us to. Because like the things that you're celebrating right now and that are in your life are a direct result of your past. And instead of I could have been an evil dictator with mustaches, like you're celebrating, you're celebrating. I have a wife in LA. I'm doing life. I
have cats.
I'm a flame Ashura. This is like so cool.
Okay, hold on. The flame Ashura. So Mark, I don't watch anime. He got me into literally watching one thing, and that was Demon Slayer. It's the only thing I've watched, okay, and I actually really thoroughly enjoy it. I was surprised myself because I'm just not into it, but he is completely into it, but I love it. It's so good. And
we're so bummed at the end of the train. It's such a beautiful way to go, but like, gosh.
But what's your favorite part about working, favorite thing, I guess, about working as Rengoku?
Oh, gosh. The Rengoku has quite literally, it has very much changed my life. If there's one role that I can point at that has fundamentally changed a lot of things about just like I've gone to tons of conventions to meet folks. I've been involved with this little cultural touchstone, and not even a little cultural touchstone.
It's got a cult following.
It does have a cult. Yeah, a big cult.
It's got such a huge fan base.
The most important thing about this, like I've loved, I love working in theater. I love working in entertainment. What Rengoku has done when you talk about your story with Final Fantasy, and the way it's affected you and the way it's helped you to connect with loss in your own life and perhaps to process some of that loss. When I've started going to conventions, and meeting people and seeing Rengoku cosplay and seeing the Rengoku merchandise, but then seeing Rengoku tattoos, people who have set your heart ablaze, Rengoku's face, sword, dying moments tattooed on their bodies, hearing people say that it has helped them process getting through school, getting through a tough time at work, getting through a tough time where they think they might take their own life, and things like that, where with the loss of their own brother, like I've heard stories, more of these stories than I can count now, and that's what it means to me, is that it's exactly what you were saying about how this affects our lives. And I had no idea that this was going to have the effect uh, going into it. I knew it was a cool role. I knew it was a cool show. I knew the script was good. I was excited to step up to the plate and do it. But the real treasure of it has been after the aftermath and seeing everybody and seeing the impact that it's had. And that I don't know I don't know when that gets matched again. You know, and to be a small part of that is it's tremendous. And I don't often know how to deal with it other than to just like be quiet, listen, make eye contact, be present, you know, and like take it in and know that this is everything that I believe that creativity and art is capable of achieving. And because I know I've felt it in my own ways, in the same way that you have, with maybe not with this in particular. I mean, with this now, for sure. And even in the moment of recording, I mean, it was affecting me too, as I was recording it. Funny little divergent story. I was reading a script today, and one thing that I do like about art and creativity in general is, as I'm reading through this, I'm reading through lines of this character and the bio and whatnot, and I got to a point where I was like, "Oh my God, I know exactly how you feel." This thing like just hit me, and I was like, "Oh my!" I see a little bit of myself in my own experience there, and I think that it's great. It's great to be able to like meet those moments where that is reflected, and I think that is part of that human connection that allows us to process our own lives, to see other people, to be empathetic. So I mean, it's even with this. I don't know if I'll get it. I don't know what'll happen. I'll go in, I'll audition. But to me, again, to bring it back to Demon Slayer, that's the most special part of Demon Slayer to me and my involvement with it. And I couldn't feel more grateful and more lucky to have a bit of that.
Are you worried your child feels defeated when things don't go their way? Do they struggle to adapt in challenging situations? My free video training is here to help. Using the SMART learning method, blending storytelling, movement, and music, we engage your child's mind, body, and heart. Through uplifting stories, interactive activities, and joyful music, your child will learn to embrace challenges as opportunities for growth. For deeper insights on the SMART learning method, check out episode 4. Download your free video training today at katskis.com/mindset and help your child shift their perspective and thrive. Again, that's katzkeys.com/mindset. Spending time with family, creating unforgettable experiences, and seeing the world are all part of living a wildly wealthy life. And that life isn't just for the crazy rich folks. It's for anyone who knows how to travel smart. This ebook from Just Get Out of Town didn't just change how I travel, it transformed my life. Lee and I flew both our parents to Paris for $200 each in first class, while others paid $1,000 in economy. Our first class flight to Taipei, just $50. In our podcast, we talk about leadership skills and how a true leader never stops learning. Because I learned this way of traveling, we now take luxurious trips as a family for 80% less than what others pay. Go to wildlywealthylife.com/mytools to grab your copy today and start creating your own unforgettable memories around the world.
It's just such a gift, I think, that goes both ways, you know, like the healing, the connection, the processing that you get to do as you go through these characters. But then now, like, you're seeing at all the different cons and all these different things, just the
how
true
it affects
impact.
others.
Yeah. Like the power that's in theater, in arts, in music, in just creativity. Like there's so much of a power that's there that I'm thinking like kids in school and stuff like that, they don't always get that opportunity because they're focused on like filling in the right bubbles for the SAT or ACT or whatever,
Mhm.
or learning your basic math and English and everything, but not understanding the connection of like the human performance, the human creativity, like how that can help spur and bring everything else to life and really make us feel whole and
Mhm.
healed, in so many different ways. And it's such a power that you've been given, Mark. And it's awesome to see how that's working through you and in you also. It's really great.
Yeah, getting these characters to come to life. It's really awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Mark. It just really makes me, I mean, we both know, Mark, we love stories. I think as artists, we love stories. When we love music, we love stories because good music has good stories to them, right? And of course, like the composition and the instrumentation and all of that good stuff. But it just really encourages me because part of the shift that I've been doing kind of like in my own life is being a life coach for kids, and it's really teaching them life skills, but it's through stories. So I'm just so fortunate enough that I was looking of a way, like, how can I do this? How can I teach kids, like, the value of mindset, the value of like the confidence, how to have soaring self-esteem, how to have these things and how to shift your perspective when things don't go your way, right? That's the thing, right? Like we experience that all the time, and especially if you are an actor auditioning actively, that happens all the time, right? But it just doesn't happen to actors; it happens to everybody, right? Like things not going your way. How do you shift your perspective? And my thought was like, well, how do you teach that to kids? Like if they're like 6, how do you teach that without lecturing them about it, And so I fortunately found a program. It's called Adventures in Wisdom. And so I got certified in it. And it's basically teaching all these life skills, but it's literally through story form. So it's every life skill has a story, and you take the kids through it, and it's through guided questions and all that. But to kind of put it together, I not invented, but I just came up from my own experience. So I'm basically doing stories, movement, art of music. We're applying it to real life application, and then transformation, which is what they're going to get out of that whole process, right? So it's not just a story, but it's embodying it into our bodies through physical movement and actually putting it into music through playing the piano. So what you're sharing is basically the beginning. The story part is the beginning point of like my entranceway, my gateway to teaching these kids about these life skills. And so you sharing that really just gave me, every time I hear someone, say these things, it just gives me even more, not that I need more validation because I know this is a good thing, but it just helps, it really helps to confirm it more.
I absolutely a fantastic. I think that what you're doing too, especially when you're bringing it into the physical space. When you were talking about that, a thought came to my mind where I was like, I think it's the idealistic thought of any parent or adult is that, oh, if I could only tell the future generation all of these things so that they don't have to go through it, so that they will just know. And I think that the point that maybe we perpetually are up against is that knowing is one component of it. Embodying and feeling, and even, at times, as hard as it is, experiencing it is a part of it, perhaps inevitable in many, if not all cases, that not only knowing and having that knowledge, but then meeting every moment, because I think those moments are coming whether we want to protect or not. And what you're doing to like kind of bring it into that physical space could be just another component to meet it physically, to generate that so that those lessons can be learned in a more tactile fashion with other humans. I know we're doing this over a screen and through a podcast, and I know that there's like this whole AI threat looming, or whatever you want to call it. But I think it's so important to be with each other. I think there is an importance there, an inescapability. No matter how good a tool AI will be, here we still all physically will be. And if we're not learning and experiencing with each other, I think we're perhaps shortchanging ourselves and or setting ourselves up for a lot of difficult situations later on. So what you're doing to like make it physical seems brilliant. And I hope that there is so much success there.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's cool. Quick question on the physical side of things. I'm just thinking of the different roles that you've played, or like as you're doing different auditions, like we're listening to some of the commercial auditions that you've done.
Like Mark, you've sold me Taco Bell and Nissan Leaf. Oh, okay. You've been selling me all these things I didn't know, huh?
Well, actually, technically, on my commercial demo, those were fabricated spots. So a lot of times when you make a demo, you will do things that you haven't necessarily done to display.
Oh, right.
Well, you sound great.
That's
so
true.
let's just.
However, I have sold you Dramamine ginger chews and Cheez-Its. So,
Ooh, what? All right. So, as you're doing some of these things, though, what I'm curious about, because well, we were talking about Rengoku. So if we're talking about the Demon Slayer side of things, he's jumping around, slicing.
I'm just imagining
cutting.
you in your booth.
Yeah, like
in this booth, we recorded it in here.
Yeah. Does that happen though? Like, do you have to, or does it help you to get physical as you're doing your voiceover work, or do you have to kind of like imagine it all in your head and just let it just come out of you? Because like that.
I'm imagining you doing your zombie sounds. Sorry.
Right. So, I mean, technically, you want to, if you have a little microphone, you do want to stay on mic and like static, and probably closer than I am to it. You want to be like on axis. But one of the things that opened my mind up when doing voiceover is being physical, is bringing your body to it, is moving around. Audio engineers are wizards, and they can do a lot of, not that they want to, but they can do a lot of like post-processing, cleaning of things. So there is an amount of movement you can get. Obviously, you don't want to get too shifty and movie because it creates a lot of work down the line and it doesn't provide for good, clean audio. But yes, absolutely, using your body. This whole booth was just like fogged up at the end of that fight scene, because it's just, you're putting so much into it. And there was a thing that I wanted to say about like those moments when we're talking about physicality. A lot of times when I'll be in like a role or an audition, at the best of times, I feel like it's when I am physically connected to it. I would lie down. I was in a production of Rent, and I would just lie down and listen to. I would be listening to the recording just to kind of like get a sense of the show, and I would almost be like mentally going through the emotional obstacle course in my own head as I'm listening to it, and feeling it in different parts of my body, and going on that mental journey, and practicing a sort of like active internal empathy that I swear I've never said that term before, but I'm going to potentially use it a lot more because I think it is physical inside of us. And especially at the end of this arc, when he looks up and sees his mother. And one thing that I do love about anime is they do so much with it. Sometimes gets gaffed where they're like, where they're doing a lot of those intakes and exhalations of breath that can sometimes become, what's the term I'm looking for? They can sometimes become like trite or overused, or maybe the source of like, oh, that's just a thing that's performative. But in a way, that breath, that exhalation can become a very instead of a technical thing where it's just like, it can become physically, emotionally motivated. That gives it just a little bit of extra dimension to it. And especially at the end of that arc, when he is seeing his mother, you better believe that I was internally like also like weeping as part of the audience. But like having to then harness that emotion, I feel like emotion bangs around inside of us, in our heads, in our hearts, as a very physical thing. And to me, like the best times in acting is when that physical thing is kicking around and you can kind of dance with it inside of you. And I think it brings that sort of extra 10, 20% of something unidentifiable and special to a moment like that. And even that is internally, maybe I'm not like doing jumping jacks or push-ups in that moment, but there is something very physically happening. There's a storm inside that is brewing. And I think it's where you can also, like, you see it a lot in film. Some of the best moments in film are when no one's talking, when they're just focused on somebody. And you can be focused on somebody who is like dead behind the eyes and get nothing. But you can be focused on some of these great actors and actresses in these performances, and you know that there is chaos happening inside their heads at that moment. And that's apparent. It's so apparent. And we may not, as the audience, be able to say, that's exactly what's happening, but we feel it. We know it's happening. And that, to me, is like, that is the important part.
Wow.
So
That's great.
Wow, Mark, this is good. No, this is so good. This is so good. Thank you so much. I guess we're gonna, wrap it up because we want to be respectful of your time. Although I feel like Lee definitely probably has
We could.
so much more to ask.
I'm a talker too, so again, I will fill gaps.
I'm not far behind of you either. Don't worry.
So I guess the kind of like the final question for us, we always love asking our guests this because it's great to see the different answers because everybody has different perspective and life experiences. But what's your idea or your own take on a wildly wealthy life? What does that mean to you?
I think I was thinking about this a little bit, or I mean, maybe not this specific question, but in terms of like what matters to me, I think it's maybe to simplify it, doing your best despite what the return is. Because a lot of times I've thought about this career in many ways, and I guess I'm just talking about career, but I think that's the whole point. There's something beyond career, as we say, like, a career is when you fill out some W whatevers. They give you monopoly money or beans or whatever the currency is in return. You get to purchase a bunch of baubles that you surround yourself with and throw some parties. But I think there's so much like the pursuit of creativity, being good at a thing for the sake of being good to other people for the sake of that. And I know we live in a society that attaches a lot of importance to success as it pertains to what happens on a spreadsheet. And I just simply don't think that that's what life's about. I hope it's not what life's about. I hope it's about something. Well, I hope and I personally believe that it's about something different. And I get excited when I see good things, whether they're the most popular and well-funded things, or whether they are, a shoestring doing it for the love of it budget. Or, I think goodness exists independent of how much money gets thrown at it. And I think that is what we'd all do well to maybe pay a bit more attention to pursuing.
Yeah.
So that's my hope.
Wow.
That's great, Mark. And Mark, with everybody going to buy a PlayStation, buying a couple of copies of Remake and Rebirth, sitting down on Netflix and binge watching Demon Slayer, where else can people find you, Mark?
A lot of, hopefully in the next AAA and or indie game that's coming out, hopefully on your next favorite game console, PC, Mac, whatever you play on. They can find me on IMDb and a bunch of previous shows and stuff. You can hopefully find me at a convention coming to town near you. I swear I'm trying to get to all different places across the country. I'm on Instagram, M Whitten. I'm on Twitter for the moment at MP Whitten. And I also do a couple of I've had a couple of audio drama podcasts that got produced in the past that are very near and dear to my own creative heart. It's myself and my friend Veronica. She wrote, I did a lot of the audio production on them and acted in pretty much all of them. It's The Theater of Tomorrow and The Hotel. It is where I met my wife, Kelly. doing the Theater of Tomorrow. They're very fun audio drama podcasts. If anyone needs a quick listen when you're on the road on a trip or something, and you want to throw on some sci-fi or some moody, broody horror, you can tune into either of those. So lots of places and hopefully more.
I have an hour and a half drive to Malibu a few times a week, and I might be doing that on this tomorrow morning, actually. So yeah, here we go.
Check them out. Let me know what you think. We're real proud of them, and like I said, it's a Theater of Tomorrow is a sci-fi anthology. Lots of different fun stories. Hotel is again more of that moody horror that follows consistent characters through a lot of seasons.
Yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. Thank you, Mark. This has
Thank
been really
you,
fun.
Mark. This is so wonderful. It's so good to see you and chat with you.
Well, this has been lovely. Thank you again. And I'm so glad we got a chance to connect and chat. And I'm wishing you all the best and hopefully see you real soon.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, friends, that's a wrap on today's episode of Wildly Wealthy Life. We hope you're feeling fired up and ready to take on the world with your brilliant mind and brave heart.
If you love this episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. It helps us keep bringing you the good stuff.
And hey, while you're at it, drop us a rating or review. It takes 30 seconds, and it makes a huge difference for us.
Also, if you know someone who could use a little guidance on growth mindset, leadership, and creativity, share this episode with them. Sometimes that one conversation can spark up a whole new direction.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. Go out there, live wildly, be wealthy in all the ways that matter to you, and we'll catch you on the next one.